I don't think it's fair that he's mad. I never asked both of them to help. They offered. Everyone's acting like I'm some master manipulator who planned this whole thing, but that's not what happened. My ex offered to pay my loans when we were talking again after our breakup. Mark offered months later when we were dating. I didn't ask either of them to do it. They both just decided they wanted to help me, and now somehow I'm the villain because I let them. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. Now let's get back to the story. Mark was sitting across from me at his dining table last Tuesday night, holding a printout from my student loan company. The paper showed a zero balance, $12,400 paid in full. He'd just surprised me by paying off what he thought was my remaining debt, and he was expecting me to be overjoyed and grateful. Instead, I was staring at him in horror because I knew something he didn't. My loans had already been paid off 3 months ago by my ex-boyfriend Tyler. Mark's face was glowing with pride and love as he explained how he'd been saving up to help me start fresh, how he wanted us to build a future together without the burden of my debt. He kept talking about our plans, our future, how this would change everything for us. I tried to smile and look grateful, but I could feel my face betraying me. Mark's expression slowly changed from excitement to confusion as he watched my reaction. "Aren't you happy?" he asked, and I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. "I thought you'd be thrilled to finally be free of those payments." I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but no words came out. How do you tell someone who just made this incredibly generous gesture that it was completely unnecessary? How do you explain that your ex-boyfriend already beat him to it? That's when his laptop chimed with an email notification from across the room. Mark got up to check it, probably expecting work emails, but I saw his face change completely when he looked at the screen. My heart sank because I knew exactly what he was seeing. I'd left my email open on his laptop earlier when I was checking something, and the confirmation email from my loan company was still in my inbox. The email from 3 months ago confirming that Tyler Richardson had paid my student loan balance in full. Mark came back to the table carrying his laptop, and I could see my email was open. He set it down and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before: hurt, confused, disgusted. When Mark found the payment record on my laptop, I knew it was over. He didn't even need to say anything. The moment his eyes landed on the screen, I could feel the ground shift beneath me. The line with Tyler's name, the date, the amount, it spelled out everything I hadn't had the courage to say. 3 months ago, my ex had paid off my student loans, and I'd let Mark believe he was the one giving me that fresh start. I stood there frozen, scrambling in my head for something, anything I could say to explain, but nothing I came up with felt good enough. Not when Mark had emptied his savings account to help me, not when he'd called it a gift of love and hope for our future. He looked devastated, not just angry, betrayed. He thought he'd done something meaningful for me, something selfless. And now he was realizing it had all been a lie, even if I never technically said one. I hadn't planned it like this. I never meant to deceive him. When Tyler offered to pay off my debt, it felt like closure, like a final favor from someone who used to love me. We weren't even really talking anymore. It was messy, but it felt harmless at the time. Then Mark, months later, made the same gesture. And in that moment, when he surprised me with the payment confirmation, I froze. I smiled, I thanked him, and I didn't say a word about Tyler. I convinced myself it would hurt him more to know the truth. I told myself it was better this way. But when Mark put it all together, the stress I'd claimed to feel, the tears over payments I no longer made, it was like watching something beautiful implode in slow motion. He saw everything now, that I had misled him with silence, that I'd taken his money knowing full well it wasn't needed, that I'd let him live in a fantasy he paid for. I tried to justify it. I told myself he offered. I told myself I never asked, that it wasn't my job to stop him. But deep down I knew. I let it happen. I accepted the benefits of his generosity while hiding the truth. I made a choice. He walked out before I could fix it, said he needed time to think. But even if he comes back, I know something has broken between us. something I can't just patch with sweet words or teary apologies. Maybe I didn't lie outright. Maybe I never said the words. But I know what I did. And now I have to live with it. I'm debt-free, but I lost the person who made me feel secure, loved, and seen. Because I couldn't let go of the past. And because I couldn't be honest about the present. And maybe, just maybe, I never deserved either of them. Before I could answer, he was gone, and I was left sitting in his apartment surrounded by the remains of our romantic dinner and the evidence of my deception. That was 4 days ago, and I haven't heard from him since. Now I'm sitting in my apartment, trying to figure out how everything went so wrong so fast. Because from my perspective, I didn't really do anything that terrible. I accepted help when it was offered. I didn't lie outright to anyone. I just didn't correct some assumptions that people made. And apparently that's enough to make me the villain in everyone's story. Let me explain how this whole situation actually started, because I think if people understood the context, they'd realize I'm not the master manipulator everyone's making me out to be. Tyler and I dated for 2.5 years, from when I was 22 to 24. Our relationship was intense and complicated, the kind where we fought as passionately as we loved. Tyler was unpredictable and emotionally demanding, but he was also exciting in a way that made every day feel like an adventure. We broke up 10 months ago when he decided to move across the country for a job opportunity. He said he couldn't handle long distance and didn't want to hold me back from finding someone local. It was devastating at the time, but I eventually accepted that we just weren't meant to be. Tyler is the kind of person who makes grand gestures when he feels guilty about something. After he moved, he kept sending me expensive gifts and flowers, like he was trying to assuage his conscience for leaving me behind. About 6 months ago, Tyler started texting me regularly again. He said he missed me and regretted how things had ended between us. He was making good money at his new job and kept talking about how he wished he could help me since he knew I'd always been stressed about my student loans. During one of our late-night phone calls, Tyler offered to pay off my loans completely. He said he had money sitting in savings that he wasn't using for anything important, and he'd rather help someone he cared about than let it accumulate interest. I said no at first because it seemed like too much to accept from an ex-boyfriend. But Tyler was persistent, the way he always was when he wanted something. He kept saying he wanted to do something meaningful for me, that it would help him feel better about how our relationship had ended. He pointed out that we'd talked about combining finances and moving in together when we were dating, so helping with my debt wasn't really that different from what we'd planned to do anyway. Tyler also said that the money would just be sitting in his account otherwise, earning minimal interest, and that he'd rather use it to actually help someone than hoard it for no reason. I was tempted by his offer because my loan payments really were stressing me out financially. I was paying over $400 a month, which was a significant chunk of my budget. The payments left me with very little discretionary income, and I was constantly choosing between paying extra on my loans and doing things I actually wanted to do. But I was also suspicious of Tyler's motives. I knew him well enough to recognize when he was trying to manipulate a situation to his advantage. I wondered if he was offering to pay my loans as a way of keeping me emotionally tied to him, or as leverage to convince me to move to his city and get back together. When I asked him directly about his expectations, Tyler insisted that he didn't want anything in return. He said he just wanted to help me because he cared about me, regardless of whether we got back together or not. He said that if I met someone else and moved on completely, he'd be happy for me. He claimed that helping with my loans was about closing our chapter in a positive way, not about keeping it open indefinitely. I wanted to believe him because the offer was too good to pass up. Being debt-free would change my entire financial situation and give me options I'd never had before. So I accepted Tyler's offer, and he transferred the money within a week. Suddenly, I was completely free of student loan obligations for the first time since college, and it felt incredible. I called Tyler to thank him after I received the confirmation that my loans were paid in full. He seemed genuinely happy about being able to help, and he didn't mention anything about getting back together or expecting anything from me in return. For a few weeks, everything seemed fine. I enjoyed having the extra money in my budget, and Tyler and I continued our occasional phone conversations without any pressure or drama. But gradually, Tyler started hinting that maybe we should visit each other, or that maybe I should consider moving to his city, since I no longer had debt tying me to my current location. He never explicitly said that paying my loans meant I owed him a relationship, but the implication was becoming clearer with every conversation. He'd helped me financially, and now he expected me to consider giving our relationship another chance. That's when I started pulling back from our conversations. I realized that despite his claims about not wanting anything in return, Tyler was definitely expecting something. He'd used his generosity as a way to keep me emotionally connected to him, but by then, it was too late to give the money back. My loans were already paid off, and Tyler had made it clear that he wouldn't accept repayment. I was stuck feeling obligated to someone whose motives I no longer trusted. That's the situation I was in when I met Mark 2 months later at a friend's birthday party. Mark was everything Tyler wasn't. Stable, emotionally available, straightforward about his feelings. Where Tyler made me feel like I was constantly walking on eggshells, Mark made me feel safe and valued. When Mark and I started dating, I never mentioned my student loan situation because it seemed irrelevant to our new relationship. Why would I tell my new boyfriend about financial help I'd received from my ex? That would just create unnecessary drama and make Mark feel like he was competing with Tyler. I figured that my past with Tyler was none of Mark's business, and that there was no reason to complicate our new relationship with details about my previous financial arrangements. Mark would occasionally mention my loan payments in passing, asking how they were going or if I needed help with budgeting. I would give vague responses, not exactly lying, but not correcting his assumption that I was still making payments either. It felt easier to let him think I still had debt than to explain the complicated circumstances of how it had been paid off. I told myself that it wasn't really deception, just avoiding unnecessary complications. The situation continued for months, without any problems. Mark never directly asked about my specific loan balance or payment amounts, and I never volunteered information about Tyler's payment. We were both happy, and I didn't see any reason to create drama by bringing up my ex-boyfriend. Mark is the kind of person who notices when people are stressed about money, and he'd seen how my loan payments used to affect my mood and my budget. He knew they'd been a source of anxiety for me, so he probably assumed they still were. I should have corrected that assumption, but I was afraid that telling him about Tyler would make him feel insecure or competitive. I thought I was protecting our relationship by keeping my past separate from our present. Then Mark decided to surprise me by paying off what he thought was my remaining debt. I had no idea he was planning something like that. Mark had mentioned wanting to help me financially in the past, but I thought he was talking about smaller gestures like covering dinner or helping with rent if I needed it. When he presented me with that loan payoff confirmation, I was genuinely shocked. I had no idea how to react because I knew his incredibly generous gesture was completely unnecessary. Should I have told him immediately that another man had already paid my loans? Probably, but he was so proud and excited about what he'd done that I didn't want to crush him by explaining that his romantic gesture was meaningless. I thought maybe I could figure out a way to handle the situation gracefully. Maybe I could use Mark's money for something else that would benefit both of us, like a down payment on an apartment we could share, or a vacation we'd been talking about taking together. Or maybe I could quietly return the money to him without having to explain the whole complicated history with Tyler and make him feel like his gesture hadn't mattered. I was trying to protect his feelings while figuring out how to fix the situation. But then he saw that email from my loan company, and everything fell apart. Now everyone is acting like I'm some kind of master manipulator who orchestrated this whole thing to get money from multiple men. But that's not what happened at all. I never asked Tyler to pay my loans. He offered because he felt guilty about how our relationship ended, probably hoping it would convince me to give him another chance. When it didn't work, he eventually moved on. I never asked Mark to pay my loans either. He surprised me with it because he wanted to help his girlfriend start fresh and build a future together. I didn't manipulate him into doing anything. The only thing I'm guilty of is not correcting Mark's assumption that I still had debt. But he never directly asked me about my balance, and I never directly lied to him about it. Is it my fault that 2 different men decided they wanted to help me financially? Is it my fault that they both made their offers without consulting each other or checking with me about my actual needs? I don't think so. I think I'm just someone who was in a complicated situation and tried to handle it the best way I knew how without hurting anyone's feelings. But apparently, Mark doesn't see it that way. I've been texting him for 4 days trying to explain my perspective, but he won't respond. I've called him multiple times, but his phone goes straight to voicemail. I even went to his apartment yesterday, but he either wasn't home or was ignoring me. The silence is killing me because Mark isn't just my boyfriend. He's become my best friend and my emotional support system. Losing him feels like losing a part of myself that I didn't know I'd become so dependent on. I talked to our mutual friend Sarah about the situation, hoping she could help me understand Mark's perspective, or maybe put in a good word for me. But Sarah just looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language when I explained what happened. She said that from the outside, it looks like I was using both Tyler and Mark for financial gain, playing them against each other to maximize my benefits. She said that my explanation about not technically lying wasn't convincing to anyone who heard it. Sarah suggested that I focus on understanding why Mark is hurt instead of trying to justify my actions. But I do understand why he's hurt. He feels like I took advantage of his generosity and deceived him about my situation. The problem is that I don't agree with his interpretation of what happened. I think he's being unfair by refusing to consider my perspective or acknowledge that the situation was more complicated than it appears. Yes, I should have told him about Tyler's payment. But Mark never asked about my specific financial situation, and I didn't want to bring up my ex-boyfriend unnecessarily. That's not manipulation. That's just trying to avoid creating problems where none existed. Yes, I accepted money from him that I didn't technically need, but he offered it without consulting me first, and I was too shocked in the moment to explain the whole complicated situation with Tyler. I never intended to hurt Mark or take advantage of him. I was just trying to navigate a complex situation the best way I knew how, while protecting everyone's feelings. But 4 days of silence from him is making me wonder if my perspective matters at all to him. Maybe the intent behind my actions is less important than the impact they had on him. I keep replaying our fight, trying to figure out what I could have said differently. Should I have immediately confessed about Tyler when Mark surprised me? Should I have refused his money and explained why? Should I have been more upfront about my financial situation from the beginning of our relationship? The honest answer is probably yes to all of those things. But it's easy to see the right choice in hindsight when you're not in the moment dealing with someone's overwhelming generosity and excitement. Yesterday, something happened that made everything even worse, if that's possible. I was scrolling through social media when I saw that Tyler had posted something about our situation. He'd shared screenshots of our old text conversations about him paying my loans, along with commentary about being a generous ex who got ghosted after helping financially. Tyler's post made it look like I'd used him for money and then abandoned him when I found someone new. He presented himself as the victim of my manipulation, someone who'd tried to help and been taken advantage of by an ungrateful ex-girlfriend. The post was getting dozens of likes and comments from people I know, most of them expressing shock at my behavior and sympathy for Tyler. Several people were tagging Mark in the comments, making sure he saw Tyler's version of events. I was furious that Tyler was airing our private business online and making me look like some kind of gold digger. His post was completely one-sided and didn't include any of the context about his attempts to use his financial help to win me back. I wanted to respond and defend myself, but I realized that engaging would just create more drama and make me look desperate. Instead, I took screenshots of the post and sent them to Mark with a message explaining that Tyler was trying to cause problems between us. Mark finally responded to one of my messages, but only to say that Tyler's post didn't change anything about our situation. He said that regardless of Tyler's motives or behavior, I had still deceived him about something fundamental to our relationship. That response made me realize that Mark isn't going to forgive me, no matter how I explain or justify my actions. He's decided that what I did was unforgivable, and he's moving on without me. The thought of losing him permanently is starting to sink in, and it's devastating in a way I didn't expect. I've been so focused on defending my actions that I haven't fully processed what losing Mark actually means. Mark wasn't just my boyfriend. He was my best friend, my emotional support, my partner in planning for the future. He made me feel loved and valued in a way I'd never experienced before, even with Tyler. With Tyler, I'd always felt like I was auditioning for his attention, never quite sure where I stood or what he was thinking. Our relationship was exciting but exhausting, full of drama and uncertainty. With Mark, I felt secure and cherished, like he'd chosen me completely and wasn't looking anywhere else. He was consistent and reliable in ways that Tyler had never been, and I'd started to take that stability for granted. Now I'm realizing that I threw all of that away because I couldn't figure out how to have an honest conversation about my past financial situation. I keep thinking about all the moments when I could have told Mark the truth. When he first mentioned my loan payments, when we talked about our financial goals and future plans, when he started acting mysterious about his surprise. Any one of those conversations could have been an opportunity to explain my situation with Tyler and avoid the deception that ultimately destroyed our relationship. But I chose the easy path of omission over the difficult path of honesty, and now I'm paying the price for that choice in ways I never anticipated. I'm also starting to realize that Tyler's motivations for helping me weren't as pure as I'd convinced myself they were. Looking back at our conversations with more clarity, it's obvious that he was using his financial help as a way to maintain an emotional connection with me. When I didn't give him the relationship he wanted in return for his generosity, he decided to punish me by exposing our private conversations and making me look manipulative and ungrateful on social media. So now I've lost both relationships, and I'm facing social humiliation on top of heartbreak. Tyler's post has been shared by dozens of people, and I'm sure everyone in our extended social circle has seen it by now. People who used to respect me now think I'm some kind of manipulative gold digger who uses men for financial gain. My reputation is destroyed, and I don't know how to rebuild it. Yesterday, I finally admitted to myself that I needed to return Mark's money, regardless of whether it would change anything between us. Keeping money I didn't need felt wrong, especially when it came from someone I'd hurt so badly. I wrote him a check for the full $12,400 and mailed it to his apartment with a note apologizing for my deception. I didn't try to explain my actions or justify my choices. I just acknowledged that I'd hurt him, that I was sorry, and that I hoped he could find someone who deserved his generosity and trust. I don't expect the gesture to change anything between us, but I needed to do it for my own peace of mind. I couldn't live with myself knowing I'd kept money from someone whose heart I'd broken. Today is day 5 of not hearing from Mark, and I'm starting to accept that our relationship is really over. He's not going to forgive me, and he's not going to give me another chance to prove that I can be honest and trustworthy. I logged into my student loan account this morning and stared at the zero balance on my screen. I'm completely debt-free, just like I'd always dreamed of being. But instead of feeling relieved or accomplished, I just feel empty. I achieved financial freedom, but I lost the person who made that freedom feel meaningful. I have everything I thought I wanted, and I've never been more miserable in my life. I keep scrolling through old photos of Mark and me on my phone, reading saved text messages, listening to voicemails I can't bring myself to delete. In every picture, he's looking at me with such genuine love and admiration. He really did love me, not just the idea of helping me or being with me. He loved me for who I was, even though who I was turned out to be someone willing to deceive him about something important to our relationship.